Welcome to a new episode from Aurora Knowledge. Today, we're taking a journey into the fascinating world of food in ancient Rome. What did the Romans really eat? Was daily life defined by the lavish banquets we know from films and history books, or was the reality much simpler, plain but nourishing meals that kept most people going? Let's explore Roman eating habits and see how food reflected their culture and society. The diet of ancient Rome was remarkably varied, but it also revealed the sharp social differences of the time. Wealthy citizens could host extravagant feasts, while poorer people often had to rely on basic but filling foods. To understand those differences, it helps to begin with the staples of Roman cooking, the foods that mattered across society. One of the central pillars of the Roman diet was bread. It was more than just everyday food. It also symbolized prosperity and stability. The Romans produced different types of bread from wheat or barley. The upper classes preferred fine wheat bread, while poorer citizens often had to make do with coarser barley bread. It was baked in large ovens and formed an essential part of daily life in most households. There were even specialist bakers, and the quality of a household's bread could reflect its social standing. Good bread suggested comfort and wealth, while low-quality bread was often associated with poverty. Another key food was porridge, made from different kinds of grain. It could be sweet or savory, and was often improved with fruit, honey, or nuts. Especially important was pulse, a porridge made from spelt or other legumes, valued as a nourishing and inexpensive meal. It was particularly common in rural areas and could be enriched with vegetables or meat when a family could afford it. In many Roman homes, pulse was a main dish, and preparing it well was a skill passed down through generations. Its versatility made it one of the true foundations of Roman everyday cooking. Olive oil also played a central role. It was used not only for cooking, but also as a dressing for salads and vegetables. The Romans were highly skilled in producing olive oil, and it was seen as a mark of wealth. It was imported and exported in large quantities, and many Roman families owned olive groves of their own. Olive oil was so important that it could even serve as a form of payment. The quality of a family's oil could affect its social prestige. High-quality oil was a luxury product, while simpler varieties were more accessible to poorer people. So using olive oil was not just about flavor, it was also about status. Wine was another indispensable part of the Roman diet. Drinking wine was widespread and belonged to everyday life. It was often diluted with water to reduce the alcohol content, and it accompanied meals as a normal part of dining. The Romans appreciated different types of wine and experimented with various growing and production methods. Wine was not only a pleasure, but also part of social life. At banquets, it flowed freely, and sharing it was an important expression of Roman hospitality. As with so many other foods, wine came in different qualities and price ranges, again reflecting the social hierarchy of Roman society. The rich could afford exceptional wines, while poorer people had to settle for cheaper and simpler ones. One especially striking item in Roman cuisine was garum, a kind of fish sauce made from fermented fish. Garum was a popular seasoning used in many dishes. It was so highly valued that it was sold in different grades and at different prices. It was not just a flavoring. It was also a status symbol. The finest garum was expensive and favored by the wealthy, while poorer people had to rely on more basic alternatives. It was important enough to be produced in dedicated factories near the coast, where fresh ingredients were easier to obtain. These operations could be large-scale and played a significant role in the Roman economy. If you wanted to see Roman food culture in motion, the markets were the place to go. The markets of ancient Rome were lively, crowded spaces where people bought fresh foods, spices, and other goods. Vendors sold everything from fruit and vegetables to meat and fish. But these markets were more than just centers of trade. They were also social meeting points, places where people exchanged news and interacted across class lines. Rich and poor could be seen side by side, making the social contrasts of Roman life visible in a very direct way. In that sense, the markets were a melting pot of goods, people, and cultures. At the other end of the spectrum were the banquets that have done so much to shape our image of Rome. These lavish feasts were often displays of wealth and power. Hosts invited friends and acquaintances not only to entertain them, but also to show off their culinary sophistication and their resources. Menus could be extravagant, ranging from simple dishes to exotic delicacies. Guests were treated to food and wine, often accompanied by music and entertainment. Banquets were not just about pleasure, They also helped strengthen social bonds and confirm status. It's interesting that Romans often hired specialized cooks to ensure the food met the highest standards. These cooks could become highly respected and build reputations of their own. There's also a surprising side to Roman eating habits. Many Romans seem to have had a taste for unusual foods. Today, we might assume they mainly focused on meat and fish, but less common ingredients also appeared in their diet. Some Romans, for example, are said to have enjoyed roasted grasshoppers or other insects as delicacies. This taste for the unusual shows how varied and experimental Roman cuisine could be. The Romans were clearly willing to push culinary boundaries and search for new flavors. That openness to unfamiliar ingredients and methods helped make their cuisine so rich and diverse. At the same time, there is a widespread misconception that Romans lived mainly on meat. In reality, meat was relatively rare in the Roman diet, especially for the poorer classes. Most people lived primarily on grains, vegetables, and legumes. Meat was more likely to appear on special occasions or at banquets than in everyday meals. That misunderstanding probably comes from the fact that the grand feasts described in historical accounts and shown in films are much more memorable than the ordinary meals eaten by most Romans. But if we want a fuller picture of Roman food culture, that difference matters. Another important aspect of Roman eating was the use of spices and herbs. These were valued not only for flavor, but also for preserving food. The Romans had access to a wide range of spices through trade with distant regions. Pepper, cinnamon, and saffron were especially sought after, and were often considered luxury goods. They were prized not just for taste, but also for their perceived health benefits. Many Romans believed that certain herbs and spices had healing properties, so they used them in both cooking and medicine. The use of these spices also highlights how connected the Roman world was. Trade across the Mediterranean allowed not just the movement of food, but the exchange of ideas and traditions. These cultural influences added to the diversity of Roman cuisine and turned it into a fascinating mosaic of tastes and techniques. The incorporation of exotic ingredients shows how open the Romans could be to new culinary experiences. An often overlooked part of this story is the role of women in the Roman kitchen. While men were often associated with the public world of banquets and display, women played a decisive role in preparing everyday meals. They were responsible for feeding the household and often had to work creatively with whatever ingredients were available. Cooking was not just a routine task, it was also a kind of craft, passed from one generation to the next. Women were often the keepers of family recipes and helped preserve culinary traditions over time. So what did the Romans eat? The answer is more complex than the image of endless luxury suggests. Roman food was shaped by social class, economic means, trade networks, and cultural exchange. Bread, porridge, olive oil, wine, and garum formed the backbone of the diet. Markets and banquets were not only places of trade and sociability, but expressions of Roman culture itself. Spices revealed the empire's far-reaching connections, while everyday cooking inside the household depended heavily on women's knowledge and skill. In the end, food in ancient Rome was about far more than survival. It reflected status, community, creativity, and the structure of society. Looking at what the Romans ate allows us to see their world not only as a story of power and war, but also as a story of daily life, shared meals, and cultural exchange. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Aurora Knowledge, turn on notifications, and let us know in the comments which topic we should explore next.